he gets it to an extent that most people will never.
Well, if you have jury duty, first and foremost, you have to cover the hurdle of being selected for jury duty. Second of all, you have to be called, and then by the time you finally get in there, of course, you're losing money because you're not getting to go to work. You're being forced to sit around all day, not hearing any instances of the case. When you finally get in there to the courtroom and you start hearing the instances of the case, people by that time are so fed up and so ready to go. Nowhere along the process do you hear, hey, what you're about to do could determine the state of the law for the future of our country and for the future of our state. Nowhere along the way do you hear what you are about to do. You not only have a right to judge the facts of the case, but you have a right to judge the law itself. In fact, you hear the exact opposite. The last time I was selected, or I didn't even get selected during the selection process, they had the audacity to say in the courtroom, you do not have the right to judge the law. You only must judge the facts of the case.
It's interesting. John Jay, who was the first, Chief Justice and one of the legal architects of the Constitution. I mean, he didn't necessarily pen it, but he was the one that they looked to for what's the legal term here, and legal not as in statute and stuff like that. He was looking back to Locke. He was looking at the Magna Carta. How do we apply this to our Constitution? And when he was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the first one. So this guy, I mean, get it back to context. This guy helped start the Union of States. This guy was the first Supreme Court Chief Justice. So he was the one that started out when cases came before him. Okay, what do these things mean? Well, he knew because he practically wrote the thing. And there was a few times that the Supreme Court had trial by jury, which we don't have now. But he, in his statements to the jury, would say that it is assumed that the judges here know the law better than you. You still have the right and duty to judge the law as well as the facts in these cases. So that's the Supreme Court justice who helped start this country, and he got it. So all these people now, I'm going to go back to all people that say it now, they're obviously smarter than John Jay, who, yeah.
Right, not even that they're smarter, but they understand the context of the Constitution better than the guy who helped write it.
Mm-hmm. All right, you guys ready to go to the phones? Take some phone calls. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning. This is Patriot's Lament. Who's this?
Hey,
Joe, what's on your mind?
I don't want to go against the idea of people making up their own minds when they're on juries, because I kind of believe that's a thing you should do. But at the same time, there is a danger to it. I lived in the South for a short time when I was a kid. In the place we were staying, the man that we lived with he was the sheriff. He was the head of the Ku Klux Klan in that village, in that town. And he was the guy who employed everybody. He had all the businesses. And I can tell you right now that if you have a jury of people who can make up their minds about anything they want to make up their minds about, they don't have to declare why no, it's just saying, what the court is saying is we'll give you the situation and you put logic to it and give us the answer. What you're saying is that you can whimsically say, well, I don't happen to like that law. I don't happen to believe blacks are really humans. You can say anything in your mind. You don't know what you're going to say. So the problem is you end up with juries who are hanging people who shouldn't be hung simply because they apply that same reasoning, because they don't have to declare, oh, I'm doing this because I don't believe in the law. So in other words, it's an invitation to trouble.
What you run up against with that argument is history, because historically, jury nullification was not used to hang people.
What are you talking about? I'm saying, who says nullification? They don't have to say I'm nullifying.
No, they just rule whatever, right? But historically, the jury ruling that the law in cases like you're talking about with racism and trying someone because of their race, the jury going against the law, if you look at the instances where that happened, if you look at history, the jury was nullifying laws that said slaves weren't people. The jury was saying that slaves are people. If you look at history and how nullification was actually used.
Wait a minute. You don't look at all the case history. I know better than that.
Hang on a second, Dave. Okay, Mr. Know better than that. Let me ask you. Give me one example. Just one. Time, place. Give me an example from history where you believe the jury nullification led to somebody being killed.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh, no. Yes, you did. You said it happened thousands of times. Go ahead. Give me one.
What I said was that you don't know if a case is being decided by. Did these people come out and declare, I am nullifying the law? They didn't say that.
How many people
you do actually know that you do know if you look at pre-Civil War cases when Spooner was writing, because the precedent had already been set. That was what the Dred Scott case was about. It said a slave is not free no matter if he buys his freedom, someone else buys his freedom, he escapes to a non-slave state. They said he is not free. He will be returned to his slave owner. And the juries who ruled against that were nullifying. It's very plain to see because the Supreme Court precedent was in one place and the jury rulings were in another place. And so you're going against the history of jury nullification by making your assertion, and you have no evidence to support your claim. That's what Steve is calling you on.
No, he's not calling me on that because and obviously you don't understand what I'm saying.
Obviously, I don't understand what you're saying. Go ahead.
Yes. What I'm saying is that nobody declares I'm doing this for jury. Now, you may be able to find a case where it's obvious that happened. I'm not denying that. But what I'm saying is explain all those blacks that were hung in the South. How do you explain that?
I don't think any of them had jury trials. Aaron, go ahead.
That can be explained by the exact opposite of protection by the jury. That was by mobocracy, lynch mobbing people.
That's
actually the whole point.
That was actually.
No, there were official lynchings. There were official hangings. Too,
yes,
besides the lynchings.
They were officially sanctioned by the government. The government was the one that had the slaves in the first place. They were the ones sanctioning slavery. And I think I understand what you're saying because absolutely. You can have white supremacists back then.
We don't have it now.
Well, yeah. No, I understand we do. But I'm saying in what we're talking about. You could have someone that murdered a black person and have a jury find him not guilty. That's wrong. That's an abuse of that. But at the same time, the courts, the actual government, the legislators at the time were also a part of that. I mean, the courts themselves were finding men that killed black people not guilty. I mean, yes, I'll say there is an abuse there, but it was also used for good, like Dave said with Dred Scott, where juries were finding people not guilty for hiding out blacks. They were keeping them from having to go back. I absolutely agree that there can be an abuse on both sides of it.
O.J. Simpson.
Yes.
Maybe,
but I didn't get to be there. But.
That's an interesting case, actually. There's a guy, there's a private investigator who was not convinced in that case that O.J. had actually done it, and he spent the last 10 or 12 years going through that, and he's presented all his evidence online. You can actually go read all of his new findings, and he's presented his new evidence. He thinks he found who actually did that. Because I was convinced of that too. It's like, O.J. got away with murder. But I wasn't there to see the evidence. I wasn't in the jury box. I didn't hear the arguments, right? We read what was in the paper. Who's better qualified to rule on a case? The jury who's there for all of the evidence, all of the arguments, or people who read the newspaper and get the pop stuff? What was it, Casey Anthony or whatever? Who we all are led to believe she killed.
Murder. She killed
a kid. Right. I don't know if she did or not, and I didn't sit in the jury box for weeks and have evidence presented. One of the jurors from that case was on. I think she was on the Today Show, and she said, I don't know if she killed her kid or not. She said the prosecution did not make a strong enough case for me to find this woman guilty, because if I find her guilty and she's sentenced to death, and it turns out she wasn't guilty, then I'm guilty of murder, right? And so the burden of proof is on the accuser. And if the state brings a charge forward and they cannot convince the jury, that's exactly the jury's job. The job, the complaint of the jury is, well, sometimes they let sometimes they let guilty people go.
30 seconds.
But that's better than killing innocent people.
All right, Joe, thank you very much for your phone call. I really appreciate having a reasoned discussion with you, and that is what we're all about here on Patriots Lament. We want people to think things through for themselves, do some reading, do some research, get some actual tangible examples from history, and make your case. We'll be right back after the news.
Fairbanks is listening to News, Fair, and Balanced. The whole of Fox News Radio.
I'm Lillian Wu. 3,500 delegates about to cast votes shortly in the Florida GOP straw poll, which some analysts believe may help predict the party's presidential nominee.
But some of the candidates have decided to skip actively courting those delegates.
I think that's a big mistake. I think the Florida straw poll is very important. I think Ronald Reagan understood how important it was in '79. And that's the reason I'm here.
That's Rick Perry this morning referring to Reagan's straw poll victory that helped him gain momentum toward the GOP nomination.
Fox Radio's Rich Johnson. Perry now in Michigan, where rival Mitt Romney was already campaigning.
It feels very much like home. Coming to the place where you're born and raised.
Romney's father was a governor of Michigan. And Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, who yesterday submitted a statehood bid to the UN, says he's rejected a peacemaking blueprint forwarded by international mediators, that the plan does not demand a halt to Israeli settlement construction. Fox News. We report, you decide.
Stimulating your senses with stimulating talk.
Having a great time listening to the radio here and just listening to everyone's comments.
This is News Talk 660 KFAR.
This hour of programming is a joint venture paid for by Aaron Bennett for Burrow, 3015 Amanda Loop, North Pole, Alaska, 99705. It is also paid for by Joshua Bennett for Burrow, P.O. Box 58578, Fairbanks, Alaska, 99711. Welcome back to Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. We are Local Talk Radio. Joining us in the studio, of course, Dave Giesel from the Campaign for Liberty, Aaron Bennett from Far North Tactical, and Josh Bennett from Bighorn Enterprises. I realize you guys sit in the same seats every single week.
It's because we're conformists.
No, well, I think that obviously, from my perspective, we've got Dave on the right, Josh on the left, Aaron is a centrist. I mean, can we start our own political parties?
Aaron's a moderate.
I'm a sandwich.
I thought we're all part of the same party, right? The Godless Monkey Party.
Now, isn't that though where the concept of right and left came from? Came from the seating arrangement in the French houses of Congress. So it has absolutely nothing to do with the actual political points of view. It has to do with the titles and the appellations that were given afterwards. Now,